Hey guys, what is up? Today we are in the 10th part of the Second Crusade. So far the Crusades have been like, we've gone to Portugal, and we've stayed in Europe, so we have yet to actually get to the Holy Land. And according to my time code, after this episode we only have 2 more, so I'm seriously starting to wonder if is there going to be any accomplishment in the Holy Land at this point. Because, Henry of, King of the Germans tried to go in, but he got jumped by the Seljuks, so he's kind of crippled at the moment, waiting for the French. So yeah, I guess we'll find out, won't we? So, I really want to get into this, but first I need to tell you, if you want to watch the original video by Kings and Generals, the link to his video is down in the description down below. It is the first link that you will find. And if you want to help support me in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and consider being a YouTuber Patreon member. It would really help me out a lot. Now with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let's watch the 10th part of Kings and Generals, the Second Crusade.
The conquest of Lisbon, however, was not the only endeavour where Christians could take advantage of the situation in Al-Andalus. Alfonso VII, King of Castile and Leon, stylizing himself as the Emperor of all Spain, together with his vassal, Ramon Berenguer IV, Count of Barcelona, had plans for expansion across the southern and eastern part of the Iberian Peninsula at the expense of the declining power of the Almoravid state. On the other side of Gibraltar, a new religious group called the Almohads began to emerge, and under its new leader, Abd al-Mumin, began to form a serious threat to the Almoravids and the Christian kingdoms of Iberia. Not wanting to wait for Almohads to take all the spoils, the Christian rulers of Iberia decided to act. Thanks to Pope Eugene III's bull, called Divina Dispensatione, the Crusaders from other parts of Europe soon began to take interest in taking the cross to Iberia, like Frankish pilgrims from southern France and Italian cities. However, the biggest contributor to the crusade against the Moors was the maritime Republic of Genoa. During the Crusades, Italian merchants, including those from Venice, made a profit through maritime trade, especially in the trade of goods and transporting pilgrims to the Holy Land. Their trade expansion, however, had been strained by ongoing Arab and Berber piracy, oftentimes supported by the Muslim taifas in Iberia. The biggest offender to the Genoese merchants was the city of Almeria, which managed to enrich itself thanks to piracy and the slave trade from captured Italian sailors. 2 years prior, the Genoese fleet, led by a formidable naval commander and historian, Cafaro, tried to halt Muslim piracy, but to no avail, only managing to raid Minorca and temporarily block Almeria. As soon as Divina Dispensatione and King Alfonso VII's call for help were announced on the streets of Genoa, public opinion responded with immense enthusiasm. The Genoese had elected 10 consuls, including Otto de Buovillano, Alberto Torre, Filippo de Piazzalunga, Baldovino, Ingo, Ansaldo Pizzo, Guglielmo, Alberto Cancellieri, Ugo Guido, and Ansaldo Doria. Accompanied and guided by Cafaro, the consuls managed to amass a significant fleet, amounting to 63 ships, and gather all necessary supplies for the expedition. The Genoese decision to take part in his campaign in Al-Andalus had very much pleased the Castilian king. In 1146...
Yeah, I like the idea of the self-interest that so far seems to be prevalent in this series. I mean, every crusade has self-interest in it, but... You know what I mean? Like, the usual idea is go to the Holy Land, but everyone has taken the idea to go do other things that align with their goals. Like, you know, Alfonso and, using the Crusades to help capture the city and expand Portuguese influence and what's going on in Europe. Everyone just took the concept of the Crusade and is like, we can have a crusade anywhere, actually. Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of funny. And, yeah, I find that really interesting. And we already saw the Venetians earlier in this series when they helped the Crusader states. So, I guess, like I said, I feel like when it comes to naval time powers around the medieval ages, the 2 big ones are Venice and Genoa. Genoa? I completely forgot if there's a V or not. Fudge. My point is, you know what I mean? So, like, it is interesting to see them involved now. So, this is really interesting.
Alfonso VII attacked Cordoba, during which he raided the region and forced its governor, Ibn Ghania, to pay a tribute. In the following campaign, Alfonso managed to seize the strategic fortress of Calatrava. The neutralization of Cordoba and Calatrava allowed the Emperor of Spain to take advantage of the Almoravids' decline, and by seizing Almeria, he counted on splitting the Muslim holdings in half. Moreover, Alfonso's vassal, Count of Barcelona, Ramon Berenguer IV, had hoped to consolidate his power in Aragon and Catalonia by seizing the city of Tortosa. All these actions relied on the key naval support from Genoa's fleet. Both Iberian and Italian representatives met in Toledo in September 1146. Despite Genoese enthusiasm to join forces against their common enemy, they still intended to maintain their interests in the Mediterranean. The consuls asked for constant resupplying of their forces, demanding over 30,000 maravedis, currency used in Iberia at the time, from which 10,000 would be paid by the end of autumn, another 10,000 by Easter next year, and the remaining gold was meant to be paid after the towns were taken. The Genoese also required that 1/3 of each conquered city would be given to them. Additionally, the supplies given by King Alfonso VII and Count Ramon Berenguer IV were meant to be ready by the 1st of August 1147. After all parties agreed on these terms, both Genoa and the Christian rulers in Iberia started preparing for war. Just like during previous campaigns, King Alfonso and Count Ramon advanced deep into Muslim territories, heading towards the city of Almeria. Meanwhile, the Genoese fleet sailed for Minorca, establishing a harbour at Mahon as the main rally point. Along the way, they were reinforced by a small Catalan and Barcelonan fleet. When the Christian fleet assembled, 15 galleys with Otto di Buovellano were deployed as an advance party, which sailed to Cabo de Gata and waited for King Alfonso's arrival. However, much to their surprise, Castilian forces were not to be found, as Alfonso, with his vassals, was preoccupied seizing Baeza and tried to secure any potential strongpoints along the way. Even worse for the joint expedition, because Iberian Christian forces were spread thin, Alfonso could muster only 400 knights and 1,000 footmen, while Count Ramon had only 53 knights, aided by a few hundred cavalrymen.
If you want to become
After months of waiting, the Genoese got annoyed and decided to attack Almeria on the road, with the eventual hope of Alfonso's reinforcements during the siege.
Oh boy, okay, they're going in for it. I know the Genoese become very powerful, obviously, in terms of influence and prestige around the medieval, I think even well into the Renaissance era. So, I do know what they become later. I don't think it's ever good to just rush things. That seems to have been the cause of a lot of setbacks for people, but I guess we'll find out, though I don't think... I don't get a good vibe from this.
The undeterred Genoese had divided their ships into 15 previously delegated galleys, which approached the end of the Lena River and the Great Mosque district, where they could disembark and attempt to provoke the Muslim garrison into open battle. One of the ships, led by Ansaldo Doria, had to use fire signals to communicate with a second advance party, numbering 25 galleys, which was hidden near the delta of the Andarix River. With successful actions, the Genoese advance party was meant to allow the rest of the fleet to arrive and begin a proper siege. The attack on Almeria began when the first group of Genoese ships approached the Great Mosque, disembarking and spreading terror in Almeria's outskirts. Initially, the Muslim defenders were very skeptical about facing a numerically superior fleet and intended not to use their forces. That is why the Almerians had deployed scouts in order to check for any other Christian fleet approaching. The Genoese signal ship had to hide on the shore and resort to flag signaling in order to maintain communication between the ships. Not seeing any ship, the Muslim patrols were convinced that it was nothing more than a small Genoese raiding force. The Almerians decided to sally out with 1,400 warriors descending on the attackers. After the initial fight, the Genoese squadrons began to retreat towards their ships, allowing the Muslim forces to distance themselves from the walls. Seeing this opportunity, the signal ship issued a message to the 2nd Squadron, springing the trap and allowing Muslim forces to catch them off guard. In a fierce fight under the galleys, the Genoese...
Oh, snap. Okay, that was smart. I love the flag signals and everything. Okay, never mind. They might pull it off.
...managed to push back the Almerians. By gaining a foothold in the western part of the city, the fleet was now able to approach. From the remaining fleet, a vanguard made up of 12 galleys was selected to set sail before the arsenal of Almeria, thus directly blocking the harbour, while the Catalan and Barcelonan warships, with Count Ramon, landed at other parts of Almeria's outskirts. Gradually becoming trapped, the Almerians decided to yet again make a sally out near the mosque, this time with the entire garrison. Heavy fighting ensued between the Genoese and the Almerians. It was only by the intervention of 12 galleys blocking the arsenal that the Muslims were yet again pushed back behind the walls. Cafaro recalls that reportedly 5,000 Muslim defenders were slain during the attack, though according to historian Joseph O'Callaghan, such a casualty rate would be very unlikely. Victorious, the Genoese army set up camp at the river Lena. Despite another attack by the Almerians, the Italians stood their ground and began to deploy catapults, siege towers, and other siege engines. It was at this point that Castilian forces with King Alfonso arrived from the north with additional siege equipment, completely cutting off Almeria from Al-Andalus. Intending to block their preparations, the Muslims attempted to raid and destroy Genoese equipment, but to no avail. After 7 weeks of siege, the towers made it through, reaching the walls of Almeria. In a matter of minutes, the Genoese knights and militia rushed to the walls, engaging in melee combat.
Oh, wow.
2 towers were destroyed. Simultaneously, after
they're on the walls already. Holy crap. Yeah, this is going actually much more smoothly than I anticipated. Like, they're just kind of like really like moving. Yeah, things seem to be very good so far. The Almirans, all they've done is just sally out, but I don't know, usually when you have to sally out so much times, I think that's an indicator at times, like, you can't handle a prolonged issue, right? At least that's kind of the vibe I get. So, but that didn't probably help their manpower in the long run. So, dang.
Of Castilian catapults, an 18-yard section of the wall fell down, paving the way for a direct Christian assault. On October 17, 1147, the panicked Almerians sent envoys to King Alfonso VII. According to Cafaro, the Muslims offered 100,000 dinars for him to lift the siege. Whether the Spanish emperor received such an offer is debatable, but we can be certain that the exclusion of the Genoese during the talks led them to anger. The consuls sent a counteroffer, inviting the king to refuse. In the meantime, they secretly prepared to capture Almeria by surprise. To increase discipline, their forces were divided into 12 companies with 12 standards, each numbering 1,000 men. During the night, the Genoese quietly moved under the walls. At a given trumpet signal, the Genoese...
Okay, yeah, I kind of like this, that they've made an offer to Alfonso, and now the Genoese are like, oh heck no. So they're just gonna take it themselves. Again, don't get between, you know, they were a maritime power, the Genoese and Venice. They are, I would say profit is the biggest goal. Don't get in between them and their money, you know?
poured through the wall gap. The Almerian citizens were completely unprepared for an attack during the peace talks, and could do little but escape to the citadel. Except for the lucky few who managed to reach the citadel, Cafaro reports that over 20,000 men were slaughtered under its walls, and the remaining 10,000 were sold as slaves back to Genoa. Not wanting to let their guard down, the Genoese quickly besieged the citadel as well. After 4 days of attacks and dwindling rations, the Almerians decided to surrender the citadel. As a punishment, the Almerians had to pay for their freedom with 30,000 maravedis, and by surrendering the city to King Alfonso, while 60,000 maravedis were given to the Genoese, with a third of the city in their possession. To honor this obligation, Consul Otto de Buovellano, with 1,000 men, had to guard the city throughout the transition process. As the transition was finished, the rest of the consuls gave Otto personal control of the harbour for 30 years, in exchange for tribute for 15 years, and a half share of the revenue for another 15 years, and reduced the garrison to 300 men. This allowed Alfonso to control the city, while the Genoese now had a favourable trade position on the Iberian Peninsula.
Wow. Again, you have to give it the Second Crusade so far is pretty successful outside of the Holy Land as of right now. Like, they're succeeding in all the other theaters, especially here in this peninsula, so... Yeah, that's pretty good for Europe, I guess, and the Crusaders.
To fulfill their obligation to Count Ramon Berenguer IV, the Genoese fleet sailed with the Catalan fleet back to Barcelona in order to resupply for the winter and build siege machinery. Around the same time, a meeting took place between Alfonso VII and Ramon Berenguer at Almazan, during which a plan was made to attack Jaén. During the talks, it became clear that each ruler shared a different view on the Reconquista. Count Ramon opted for weakening Zaragoza and the remaining Muslim holdings in eastern Iberia, while Alfonso VII preferred further southern expansion at the expense of the collapsing Almoravid state. As the talks went on, it became clear that Alfonso's vision would be the most prominent one. However, at this point, the Almohads were already gaining a foothold in Al-Andalus. Beginning from 1146, the Almohad leaders crossed the Pillars of Hercules, taking Barras Jerez, Badallo, Beja, and soon most of the southern Iberian
Oh my goodness, they're blitzing. So yeah, Alfonso's gonna have to now deal with him. He's the other rival of the rising from the south. Possible showdown? I guess we'll see.
Was under their control. Going further, the Almohads used the precarious situation of former Almoravid governor Ibn Ghania to relinquish Córdoba in exchange for protection and keeping Jaén as their vassals. The siege of Jaén itself proved to be a costly venture for Alfonso, and with mounting casualties, it became clear that expansion in the southern direction was becoming increasingly difficult. After a failed campaign at Jaén, Alfonso gave the green light to Ramon's plan. Furthermore, some of the Anglo-Norman Crusaders continued their journey after the capture of Lisbon and decided to join Ramon's expedition. On the 28th of June 1148, the Genoese and Catalan forces reached the mouth of the river Ebro. It took only 4 days before the Crusader army could arrive before the walls of Tortosa. The army consisted of forces from Barcelona, led by Ramon Berenguer IV, as well as Alfonso's other vassals, who Alfonso had ordered to support Ramon's fight. It consisted of a number of contingents, including those of William VI, Count Montpellier, Ermengarde, the Viscountess of Narbonne, and the Knights of Toulouse, with clerical figures like Bernard Tort, Archbishop of Tarragona, the bishops of Barcelona, Girona and Vic, Nicholas Breakspear, Abbot of St. Rufus and Berenguer, the Abbot of La Grasse, together with the Knights Hospitales, and the supporting forces that accompanied the army were the previously mentioned Genoese fleet and a smaller Anglo-Norman contingent. On July 4th, 1148, the Crusaders deployed their army. The Count of Montpellier took position at Mount Bagnera, located west of the citadel.
Style starts.
The northern side of the city was given to the Anglo-Normans and the military orders. The main part of the army, stationed at the lower city, consisted of Ramon Berenguer IV's forces and the Genoese army. After all groups managed to set up their positions, a huge number of the Genoese soldiers, being confident after their success at Almeria, decided they didn't want a joint assault, wanting to determine their valor in battle.
Okay, so now I'm starting to pick up a trend. The Genoese are willing to just go, essentially Leroy Jenkins style and just break off from the main group. It worked in the last siege. I cannot deny that. It might even work again for all I know, but yeah, the Genoese seem to like really I mean, they're all in it for themselves to a degree, but they're more blatant about it. You know what I mean, in terms of we want what we want and we're gonna get it, and you know, we will break from the group if we have to. So that's kind of the vibe like I've gotten from them.
Their attack proved to be a disaster. Many Genoese were either killed or wounded. Humiliated, the Genoese consuls had to force their army to take an oath, swearing to never go to battle without orders. As soon as the Genoese army rallied once again, Count Ramon proposed the idea of a joint attack. Catapults and siege towers were deployed, and after fierce resistance from Tortosa's defenders, one of the siege towers broke through the walls near the mosque. Simultaneously, another siege tower had successfully reached the western section of the walls near the citadel. The Crusaders' cheerful voices clashed with the dread of the Muslim defenders, after which a desperate melee soon followed. After intense fighting, the defenders realized they were outnumbered and retreated to the citadel. This proved to be a challenge for the Crusaders, as Tortosa's citadel was 140 feet wide and 105 feet deep. At first, doubts began to circulate between the Iberians and Crusaders about whether it was possible to assault such an obstacle. The financial situation of Count Ramon also proved problematic, as the costs of maintaining a siege skyrocketed for the Count of Barcelona, during which he even had to disband some of his knights and men and send them home. It was at this point that the Crusaders tried to cover the ditch by using rocks, earth and timber.
Okay, so that's pretty bad. They need the city, and they can't, apparently, at least with Ramon, he can't sustain a long siege. So they have to kind of end this quick, which puts a time limit on them.
From the local area. When the attackers covered 2/3 of the ditch, the Genoese had finally deployed a siege tower mounting over 300 men. As the tower gradually began to reach the walls of Tortosa, the defenders began to bombard the tower using catapults and other missiles. Despite being damaged, the Genoese managed to repair it and move it forward. Even more worryingly for Tortosa, King Alfonso managed to capture the town of Esco, thus cutting off any potential help for the besieged city. Out of hope and ammunition, the Muslims surrendered, and on the 30th of December 1148, Tortosa became a possession of Count Ramon. The remaining Muslims were expelled unharmed, and the city was settled by some of the Aragonese, Anglo-Norman, French and Flemish Crusaders, while the Genoese returned to their home city as victors.
Yeah, everything's working really well. Like I'm saying, like, other than the failed expansion to the south, things have been working pretty well for the Crusaders on this peninsula. So, this is going really well.
The capture of Tortosa had opened up inland expansion for Barcelona, Aragon and Catalonia. Not intending to lose the momentum and lose the potential of the Crusader army at his side, Count Ramon Berenguer IV also decided to capture the city of Lerida, located 56 miles northwest of Tortosa. His army could also count on his vassals and allied contingents of the Count of Urgel, Viscount of Bern, Lord of Huesca, the Catalan Templar Knights and the Abbot of St. Rufus. In April 1149, the Count of Barcelona first intended to block any potential routes for a relief force, capturing the smaller strategic surrounding towns of Fraga and Mequinenza. Lacking supplies or reinforcements, they were starved out, and in a matter of 6 months, both towns surrendered.
Dang.
Lerida followed suit. The capture of Tortosa and Lerida allowed Count Ramon to gain control of the Ebro Valley, forever blocking...
Wow, dude. Ramon. Good on him, man. Like, his plan... His vision, compared to Alfonso's, seems to be the one that was practically able to work. So good on him. He's doing a great job.
The Muslims from further expansion to the north. The capture of Almeria, Tortosa and Lerida, though, did not bring any short-term gains. In a matter of years, the Almohads had gained the initiative in the Iberian Peninsula, which only intensified after the death of King Alfonso VII in 1157. However, its lasting political and cultural impact was significant. The successful campaigns of Count Ramon IV Berenguer marked a consolidation of power that would turn the county of Barcelona, Catalonia and Aragon into a single centralized Kingdom of Aragon. Furthermore, until the second...
Yeah, I've heard of the Kingdom of Aragon. And its prominence, like, in later points. I think we've covered it in other series that it appeared in the background. So yeah, we're getting all kinds of origin stories in this series, are we? With, like, Portugal and now Aragon. Like, there's a lot of, like, medieval that carries on later on. like places and stuff that are kind of like getting their beginnings. So that's really interesting. Wow, a lot of things started in the Second Crusade.
Second Crusade, the Christians in Iberia could mainly rely on papal endorsement. The Divina Dispensatione and its use by the kingdoms of Castile and the Catalans achieved a significant development of the crusading movement, turning the process of reconquering the lands of Al-Andalus from private ventures aided by Christian Europe into an active crusading frontier. Just about a month after Conrad's departure, King Louis was finally ready to follow the cross.
Okay, so I guess now we're finally focusing on getting to the Holy Land. That was a really interesting side adventure there up in Saxony and, you know, the peninsula. But I guess now we're gonna see if the Crusaders can achieve any success in the Holy Land.
Leaving the Kingdom of France in the hands of Abbot Suger, King Louis marched through the territory of the neighbouring Holy Roman Empire. Despite some tension and minor rioting while passing through Germany, Louis VII's forces soon reached the city of Ratisbon in good order. There, the Byzantine emissaries asked Louis about his intentions, demanding an oath of non-injury on Roman territory, as well as a second oath stating any towns the Franks conquered in the Holy Land could be pillaged but not held. In exchange, the emperor promised the French a steady stream of supplies and further assistance if needed. The French were not eager to accept these terms, and one participant of the crusade, named Odo of Duil, even stated that the emperor's delegates threatened to burn all the supplies prepared for the Franks if they would not comply. Though reluctant, the French nobles were persuaded by their King Louis to accept both oaths. Satisfied, the Byzantine emissary left Ratisbon. From then on, the journey through Germany came with relative ease. By following Conrad's route, King Louis VII marched from Ratisbon to Passau, and from there, the French entered the Kingdom of Hungary from the town of Klosterneuburg. The Hungarian king, Gesa II, who had no previous quarrels with the French, intended to use Louis's march to improve the relations between the two monarchies. That is why, in stark contrast to Conrad's march, Gesa eagerly accompanied the young Louis on his journey through his territory. However, during the kind exchanges and lavish feasts, Gesa found out that Boris, a rival claimant to his throne, had used the march of the French host as a distraction to slip back into Hungary in disguise and overthrow his rival.
Oh my gosh.
Angered, Gesa demanded that Louis VII hand over the usurper in exchange for an alliance and more gifts. Unimpressed, Louis denied this offer. Thus, by dawn, the King of Hungary packed his camp and retreated into the Carpathians, allowing the French to continue their journey.
Yeah, that's wild. Freaking Hungary, man. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess he was trying to win his, like, friendship, but just Louis just didn't care at the end. Wow. Diplomatic failure on the end there.
15 days of travel, the Crusaders finally reached the Byzantine border at Braničevo. The French army moved through the cities of Belgrade, Nish Sofia, and Philippopolis without an issue. This was done mainly in part due to the presence of the emperor's brother, Michael Brannus, who took care of the Franks' needs. Such a figure was necessary for the march to succeed, mainly because of the Greek populace, having already been antagonized by the German Crusaders, were not very keen on helping the Franks. When the French army reached Adrianople, the Franco-Byzantine relations began to sour. There, the imperial delegates suggested that King Louis should take the route through the Hellespont. Just like Conrad III, Louis VII refused Manuel's advice, stating that he wished to come to Constantinople and talk with the emperor directly, which the emperor refused to do.
Oh my gosh.
Nevertheless, the French reached Constantinople on the 4th of October 1147, taking quarters outside the city, while Louis was stationed in the Palace of Philipatium. Only the king and royal retinue were allowed to enter the capital, while the rest of the army stayed outside the city walls. Separated from their king and starving due to price gouging by the local merchants, relationships between the Franks and the local Greeks deteriorated further.
My goodness, it never goes. There's always drama. Whenever all these crusaders have to come through the Roman Empire, there is always drama with pillaging and like stuff. It never just goes smoothly, huh? At least like 9 times out of 10 it doesn't. Yeah, this is like, dang, dude.
To add insult to injury, the Crusaders found out that the Byzantine emperor had signed a truce with the Seljuks of Rum, which was interpreted by many as a betrayal to Christendom. Around the same time the Crusaders entered Byzantine territory, King Roger II of Sicily declared war on the Eastern Roman Empire. His renowned general, George of Antioch, captured the island of Corfu and inflicted raids on Epirus, Peloponnesus, Evia, and Greek cities like...
The loss of these was especially damaging to the Byzantines, as Normans of Sicily stole silk manufacturers and brought production methods to Palmero, allowing silk manufacturing to spread across Europe. Losing that monopoly. Yeah, this Roger guy of Sicily is like quite the thorn on everyone's side. Like, we kind of established that he wasn't even a part of the Crusades because no one trusted him, and he had beef with literally everyone. So yeah, he comes across as quite the menace at this point in history.
Athens, Corinth, and Thebes. Unfortunately, the attack came at exactly the same part of the Adriatic coastline from which the Savoy and Montferrat contingents of the Crusader army were meant to arrive. This led the Byzantines to fear the possibility that the French Crusader host might link up with Roger II and jointly besiege Constantinople.
Oh no.
My heart's fine.
These worries and accusations weren't baseless either. For days, the Franks had to sit idly under the Theodosian walls, separated from their king and angry at the Byzantines' semi-hospitality. Soon, their army began to divide. Some of the clergy and nobles, like the Bishop of Langres, Godefroy, accused the Greeks of heresy and treason, proposing to join Roger II and capture Constantinople in...
Yeah, Manuel, you need to get them the heck out. Like, you need to... That's the thing with these freaking, like, Crusaders. Like, Alexios was, like, trying to get them quickly into Anatolia as fast as possible. And rightfully so. The longer European forces linger around Constantinople, the idea and the tension start to grow, huh? So yeah, hopefully Manuel settles this quickly.
Instead of going to the Holy Land. However, these orations were opposed by the papal delegates and most notably Royal Chancellor Bartholomew. Meanwhile, King Louis VII, together with his wife Eleanor of Aquitaine, enjoyed the marvels of the Second Rome, which the king later fondly recalled in his letters to Abbot Suger in France. Despite having tried to avoid hosting Louis, Emperor Manuel prepared a warm welcome for the French ruler with lavish feasts, touring the king through holy sites inside the city, and even jointly celebrating the festival of Saint-Denis, the holy patron of France. Despite taking great care of the French king, Emperor Manuel still wanted Louis to cross the Bosphorus as soon as possible,
yes,
fearing a possible attack from the west.
Oh yeah, the anxiousness must be growing, huh? Just like, okay, we've had fun, you should probably be on your way now. You know, you got crusading to do. And Louis like, nah bro, let me chill out for a bit. It's like when you have a guest who you don't want there to be around. Like, okay, let's get this over with, dude. Oh man.
King Louis, however, reassured Manuel that he had no desire to conspire with King Roger. Partially satisfied, Manuel then asked Louis for an alliance against Roger, but the French king declined. Thus, Manuel tried to usher the French by shortening food markets. However, it was only when the Savoy and Montferrat contingents reached Constantinople that the French army began preparations to cross into Anatolia. To further speed things along, the Byzantines spread rumors about the German contingent of Conrad III having won multiple victories against the Seljuks, capturing Iconium and moving straight to the Holy
Land. If only they knew that Conrad got his butt kicked hard.
This only motivated the French king and his troops not to get left behind. Eventually, the French Crusader army was ready.
Love that old Komnenos, how do you say cunning, that to quickly motivate them. I like that.
And in the first days of November 1147, the Byzantine fleet transported King Louis across the Bosphorus. The moment the French reached Nicaea, they were greeted by Frederick, the Duke of Swabia, who would later be known as Frederick Barbarossa. Frederick delivered the grim news to King Louis. The German army of Conrad III, probably much larger than the French host, had been nearly annihilated at the Second Battle of Dorylaeum. King Conrad III was heavily wounded and, left with only 10% of his initial force, had retreated all the way to Nicaea, where he awaited French assistance. Moreover, the other German force, led by Bishop Otto von Freising, mostly consisting of pilgrims and attendants, had been ambushed by the Seljuks at Philadelphia.
Oh my gosh.
Soon, Conrad's highly reduced...
Dude, getting through the Seljuks is gonna be quite the problem as their own. They were pretty experts at killing the Crusader armies. So Louis has his hands full if he's gonna get through these guys.
German army linked up with Louis's French host, and they went on the move. While marching through Adramyttium, Pergamon, and Smyrna, the Byzantine delegates warned the Crusaders about a Seljuk army being assembled. The Greek emissaries also advised caution, inviting the pilgrims behind the walls of the closest Byzantine towns. Undeterred, King Louis decided to march further, reaching Ephesus in mid-December of 1147. There, Conrad's injuries proved to be more severe than the King of Germany initially anticipated. When the news reached Emperor Manuel, he decided to take care of Conrad's health, inviting him and his men back to Constantinople, deeming that the depleted German forces were no longer a threat to his city. Having been left by the Germans, the French continued their march southward until reaching the...
So now it's just the French on the crusade, right? It was the two main ones were the Germans and the French, and now the Germans are basically gone. So this is just gonna be a French crusade. You know, in the past crusades, never mind. Point is, I'm kind of interested in seeing how the French do in this, because, and if Louis can outmaneuver the Seljuks, because, again, the Seljuks are kind of experts in killing Crusader armies. The first crusade, the first Crusader armies got through, but after that, they were unable to, you get me? Like, the Seljuks locked in and were like, yeah, we're not letting these people through. So... yeah, this is a very dangerous situation, you know what I mean? So hopefully Louis proves to be a bit more, I guess you can say, successful than Conrad.
Valley of the Meander River. It was there that the French Crusaders tasted combat for the first time. While Louis VII and his advisors moved to the valley, they tried to find the most suitable river crossing for the army. Then, two bands of Turkoman raiders appeared on the horizon, one on the other side of the river and the second on the hilltops surrounding the valley. Despite having successfully sprung an ambush, the Seljuks' decision to directly charge into the French host and fight them head-on proved to be a grave error. The Meander Valley was large and flat, providing the heavy French knights with enough terrain to countercharge the enemy successfully. Dealing a successful blow, the French counts in the vanguard managed to break through the enemy line and force the Seljuks into flight. On the other side of the battle, the Seljuks lost their momentum, and with Louis present among knights and soldiers, the high morale allowed the French to push back the Turkish flanking force all the way to the upper hills.
Oh, wow.
Reveling in their victory, the French army decided to continue their march eastward.
Okay, alright, that's already a great start. Though, you're not out of the water yet until you get to the Holy Land. Like, the Seljuks don't strike me as the kind to, like, just give up so easily, you know what I mean? Or maybe they will, who knows, but, like, probably now getting out of there quickly and not letting yourself get too much of an ego is probably, like, paramount at this point now.
To the harbour of Attalia, modern-day Antalya. In order to avoid the mistake of their German counterparts, Louis would not risk marching directly through Seljuk territory. Instead, by moving along the Mediterranean coastline, the king could still rely on official assistance from the Byzantines. However, the French Crusaders soon realized that the further they moved east, the less support they could get from the local Byzantines. When the Crusaders reached the town of Laodicea, the place was found deserted and emptied of supplies. Thus, in order to reach Attalia faster, the Crusaders had to go through the Kazikbeli Pass, surrounding the formidable Mount Cadmus.
Okay, that sounds like a perfect place to have another battle or ambush. Dang, dude, Louis definitely is, at least his plan of trying to stay by the coast was smarter. He's learning from Conrad's failure, but this new development, I don't know. I mean, they kind of have to now, but I don't know. I'm getting a feeling that the Seljuks ain't done with the Franks yet.
The passage of Kazakh Belly was extremely narrow for baggage trains. Moreover, its surrounding slopes were covered in white, rocky terrain on which a greater host could easily disperse.
Oh no.
When the Crusader army reached Mount Cadmus, the marching column began to stretch thin,
Oh no.
with the center lengthened up to 10 kilometers straight. During the dangerous and exhausting crossing, the leaders of the vanguard, Geoffrey Rancourt and Amadeus of Savoy, failed to secure the Kazakh Belly pass, and, against orders, rushed ahead to the valley below, setting camp for the night.
Oh no.
On the other side of the slope, the rearguard couldn't control the entire baggage column, which meant that the French center, containing its baggage train, was exposed.
Oh no.
Unbeknownst to the Franks, they were not the only ones present on the mountain. Using the gap,
I knew it! I knew they weren't done. Ugh. Oh my gosh, dude. I'm telling you, just getting past the Seljuks are the thing keeping Crusader armies from the west getting to the Holy Land. They are the barrier. They are the Iron Curtain. And like, I don't know if Louis manages to actually get through, then he will have pulled off a very great feat, because so far several armies, powerful armies, from the First Crusade era to now have been destroyed trying to get through the Seljuks. So if Louis pulls it off somehow, he is a genius. But then again, like, how much losses is he gonna have to take? Because now I get the feeling he's gonna take losses if he even gets through.
the French supply line, the Seljuks poured out of the steep passes and attacked the Frankish center mercilessly.
Oh no.
Having few knights or footmen to defend the passage, the Turks broke through the Crusaders' defences, killing all that dared to oppose them. The majority of the Frankish centre was not comprised of soldiers, but civilian pilgrims, who now dispersed across the valley or tried to rush through the narrow pass.
Oh no.
This blocked the passes, cutting off the Crusaders, and resulting in the potential Seljuk extermination of the entire Frankish centre.
Oh.
Seeing this, Otto of Doil desperately rushed to King Louis, positioned at the column's rear, and begged him for reinforcements. Rocketing into action, the king rushed forward to protect the baggage train. He arrived too late, finding the baggage had already been plundered and the pilgrims stuck in the passage, trying to avoid the Seljuks' wrath. Focusing on defending the civilians, Louis and his knights threw themselves into combat with the Turkomans. However, the rocky terrain denied the French an opportunity for a frontal charge and forced them into a confusing melee in high terrain, where individual Frankish or Muslim parties fought scattered sorties. In the midst of the fighting, the king lost his horse and was separated from his men. Surrounded by the Turks, Louis climbed over the nearest rock, covering himself with a shield and fighting for his life.
Oh my gosh, this is terrifying. Holy crap. If Louis dies, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
The king wore armor that resembled most of his nobles, so it took a long time for his knights to realize that their monarch was in peril.
Oh, that's...
After saving their ruler from certain death, the Crusaders forced most of the Seljuk groups to flee. Despite securing...
Oh my gosh, that was terrifying. I thought Louis, for a second, there was a goner. Holy crap. Okay, that's... He survived, though at the cost of his baggage train and center, so... Dang, dude.
The passage for the pilgrims, the battle at Mount Cadmus proved to be a disaster for the Franks. Their baggage train was looted, and many of the French knights and pilgrims had been killed. Hungry and demoralized, the French main host finally managed to cross the pass and rejoin with its vanguard. Blaming Geoffrey of Rancourt for the defeat at Mount Cadmus,
Okay, Geoffrey of Rancourt was one of the many barons of Poitou. However, he managed to gain a lot of prominence thanks to the efforts of Eleanor of Aquitaine. Geoffrey was the man who entertained and helped to form a bond between Queen Eleanor and King Louis. His banishment had a serious impact on Eleanor's relations with her husband. As we know, they separate later.
Louis VII ordered Geoffrey to return home in shame. Seeing a significant morale drop in his army, King Louis publicly swore an oath of trust before the Templar Knights, putting them in charge of the military affairs of the Crusade. In a political move that was unheard of at the time, the king effectively gave up the military command of the army into the hands of the Templars.
Wow.
The Knights of the Temple immediately put their knowledge and expertise into action, issuing orders that no man or woman could abandon the column regardless of circumstances.
Okay. Alright, that's actually very humble of Louis. Again, like, usually we are used to kings just always being in charge, so that's, this could prove to be prudent, if assuming that apparently the knights are more knowledgeable about this area and whatnot, and the Holy Land. So that's a very humble move, actually, in a way. Like, let's see if it pays off. If it pays off, a great move, you know? But you think something like that would be normal, right? Don't stray from the column. I thought that would be like kind of like go without saying, right? Like, you know, unless you're gonna go forage or something, but like ideally stick as close together as possible lest we get jumped, but apparently that wasn't in place, so that's interesting. So yeah, overall very interesting.
From now on, they would rely primarily on infantry and missile troops remaining behind the battle line to fend off any Turkoman attacks. The remaining Frankish horsemen in the army were meant to be used as a flanking force, but were strictly forbidden to pursue the enemy. Any disobedience was severely punished regardless of status or birth. The Templars...
Dang, the Templars are putting down the law. They are standing on business, and their ideas are actually sound incredibly practical. Dang. Okay, yeah, they seem to know exactly what to do at this situation.
Distance proved key for the Crusade's success, as the army managed to cross 3 rivers without any issue, and even repel attacks.
Wow.
Thus, the Frankish army successfully reached the city of Atalia on January 20th, 1148.
Dang. Okay, that's great. Great for Louis, he making that move. That might be one of the smartest moves ever.
Upon reaching Atalia by February of 1148,
I'm Noelle. I go to...
King Louis awaited the Byzantine naval support that would transport his army to the Principality of Antioch. Unfortunately for the king, the stark reality of logistics and local politics proved to be very challenging for the Crusaders. The local governor didn't have enough ships to transport the large French army. Meanwhile, Atalia's countryside was heavily devastated due to Turkic raids. Although the city belonged to the Byzantines, its governor had forged some sort of pact with the local Seljuks in the interest of protecting his citizens. This meant that the Byzantine governor often had to choose between aiding the Crusaders or feeding his people. Furthermore, the French host was too enormous to be housed inside the city. Thus, most of the Crusaders were forced to camp under the city wall, where they were easily exposed to attacks by the Turks. Not surprisingly, the Seljuks used hit-and-run tactics on the pilgrims who were denied entry into Atalia. Realizing that waiting for proper naval support was futile, Louis VII decided to continue the march using the land route to Antioch through Cilicia. Although Louis's plan had merit, many of his nobles feared another Mount Cadmus, so they came up with a plan of using any Byzantine naval assistance they could hope to acquire to take the sea route, from where they'd act as a supply line to the king's landward force. Thus, the Crusader army split, and the landward Crusaders safely reached Antioch by marching through Cilicia. King Louis himself travelled by ship, and arrived at Saint-Simeon harbour on the 19th of March, 1148.
Wow. Okay, so we have finally arrived to the Holy Land. Yeah, Louis is one of the few Crusader armies and like kings from the west to make it there, right? At least through the Seljuks, because again, the Seljuks were playing great defense, destroying multiple armies trying to get there, so good on him. Like, you know, that's pretty impressive actually. And yeah, I'm gonna end the video right here, guys. And tomorrow we're gonna continue with part 11. I'll see you guys then.